The clinking of baccarat crystal glasses echoed through the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel. It was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary, an event designed less for celebration and more for an aggressive display of wealth. I sat at the far end of table 14, the one usually reserved for distant cousins and forgotten acquaintances. My attire, a simple, unbranded black dress I bought off the rack for $39, stood in stark contrast to the sea of Armani suits and custom Vera Wang gowns surrounding me. My mother, adorned in a suffocating layer of pearls, tapped her silver spoon against her glass. The room fell silent. Beside her stood Julian, my older brother, the undisputed golden child of the family. He wore a tailored Tom Ford suit, flashing a smile that had been funded by our parents' endless generosity. "Thank you all for coming," my mother announced, her voice amplified by the microphone. "Tonight, we celebrate not just our marriage, but the phenomenal success of our son, Julian. His tech startup, Apex Innovations, is revolutionizing the industry." A polite applause rippled through the room. I took a slow sip of my iced water, feeling the condensation on the glass. The reality was far less glamorous. My tablet, resting quietly in my worn leather tote bag, held the quarterly financial reports for Apex Innovations. They were burning through capital at a catastrophic rate of $1.2 million a month. Their customer acquisition cost had tripled, and their flagship product was riddled with critical bugs. But to my parents, Julian was the next Steve Jobs. My father took the microphone, his chest puffed out with pride. "To ensure Julian's company reaches its full potential, your mother and I have decided to liquidate our primary assets, including the estate, to provide a $5 million capital injection into Apex. Consequently, we are restructuring our will. Julian will receive the entirety of the estate to manage the family's legacy." He paused, his eyes scanning the room until they locked onto me. The warmth vanished from his gaze. "We also expect family to support family. Alara," he said, saying my name like a disappointing afterthought. "We expect you to transfer your savings to Julian's holding account by Monday. It is the least you can do, given you only work that mundane data entry job." The silence in the ballroom became suffocating. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me, filled with a mixture of pity and disdain. Julian smirked, adjusting his silk tie. "Come on, Elle, it's just a few $1,000. Don't be selfish." I set my water glass down. The ice clinked softly against the rim. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flush with anger. I simply looked at the three of them standing on the opulent stage, blinded by their own delusion. "No," I said quietly, yet clearly enough to carry across the tense room, "I will not be transferring any funds to Apex Innovations." My mother's face contorted, turning a mottled shade of red beneath her expensive foundation. "Excuse me? You ungrateful child. We housed you, we fed you, and this is how you repay us? You drive a rusted 12-year-old Honda and live in a cramped, miserable shoebox apartment. Julian is building a legacy, while you waste away staring at spreadsheets for a nameless corporation." "The spreadsheets tell a very clear story, Mother," I replied, my tone flat and entirely devoid of emotion. I didn't bother to mention that the nameless corporation was Vanguard Capital Partners, a private equity firm of which I was the majority shareholder and CEO. Nor did I mention that my shoebox apartment was merely a convenient pied-a-terre near my office, while my primary residence was a 70-acre estate in the Hamptons. "If you refuse to support your brother," my father interrupted, his voice booming with forced authority, "you are no longer a part of this family. You are a stain on our reputation. Do not expect a dime when we pass. Consider yourself cut out, permanently. Leave. Now." I stood up slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from my $39 dress. I picked up my worn leather bag. "Understood," I said calmly. "I wish Julian the exact level of success his business model warrants." I turned and walked out of the ballroom, the sound of my sensible, low-heeled shoes clicking rhythmically against the polished marble floor, leaving behind the suffocating scent of expensive perfume and impending financial ruin. 6 months passed. The silence from my family was absolute, punctuated only by my mother's occasional emails. She would forward photos of Julian's newly leased Aston Martin, always adding a pointed sign-off, "Thinking of you in your little apartment." If only you had listened. I never replied. I simply archived the emails in a folder labeled Apex-Liability. From the 72nd floor of the Vanguard Capitol building, I watched Julian's empire rot. The $5 million injection from my parents' liquidated estate evaporated in exactly 182 days. Julian hadn't invested in product development. He had spent it on aggressive marketing, luxury office renovations, and an inflated executive salary. My tablet displayed the grim reality. Apex Innovations' active user base plummeted by 78%. They were burning through their remaining cash reserves. Miss Vance, Marcus, my vice president of acquisitions, said softly, stepping into my office. He placed a thick file on my mahogany desk. Apex Innovations is officially seeking a bailout. They've defaulted on their payroll for 2 consecutive cycles. The CEO, Julian Vance, is desperate. I opened the file. The numbers were catastrophic. What is he offering as collateral for the restructuring loan? I asked, tracing a line of red ink with my Montblanc pen. Everything, Marcus replied. He is leveraging the intellectual property, the office lease, and a multi-million-dollar residential estate in Connecticut. It appears his parents transferred the deed entirely to his name a few months ago. My parents' home. The house I grew up in, given to the golden child, only to be used as a bargaining chip to save a sinking ship. Julian was attempting to secure a $12 million loan with high-yield distress terms. I leaned back in my leather chair, looking out at the skyline. The trap had set itself. If a traditional bank looked at these financials, they would laugh him out of the lobby. He needed a vulture fund willing to take a massive risk. Approve the loan, I instructed quietly. Marcus blinked, a rare display of surprise. Ma'am? The risk assessment on Apex is an F. We will never see a return on this capital. It's a toxic asset. We aren't looking for a return on capital, Marcus, I said, my voice as cool as the air conditioning. We are looking for acquisition through default. Process the loan through our subsidiary, Obsidian Trust. Structure the contract with an ironclad acceleration clause. 1 missed payment, and Obsidian assumes immediate ownership of all collateral, including the Connecticut estate. He won't survive the first quarter, Marcus noted. I am aware, I replied, closing the file. Ensure my name is nowhere on the preliminary paperwork. Let him think he's outsmarted a faceless conglomerate. Julian thought he had secured his legacy. In reality, he had just handed me the keys to his entire existence. 92 days later, the trap snapped shut. Julian missed his first scheduled interest payment of $145,800 to Obsidian Trust. Under the acceleration clause, the entire $12 million principal, plus severe penalty fees, became due immediately. I decided to deliver the notice of default personally. I arrived at the sleek glass-walled headquarters of Apex Innovations at exactly 10 in the morning. I wore a tailored charcoal suit, still unbranded, still impeccably cut, and carried a single leather folder. Marcus walked a half-step behind me, flanked by 2 of our corporate attorneys. We bypassed the protesting receptionist and walked directly into the executive boardroom. Inside, a celebration was underway. Julian was popping a bottle of Dom Perignon, surrounded by his remaining executive team and, to my mild amusement, our parents. They had likely come to toast his brilliant corporate restructuring. What is the meaning of this? Julian snapped, pausing with the champagne bottle halfway to a crystal flute. His eyes widened as they landed on me. Alara? How did you get past security? Get out. You are not welcome here. My mother gasped, clutching her suffocating pearl necklace. You have some nerve showing up here, Alara. After ignoring my emails, you come crawling back just when your brother secures another round of funding. I didn't smile. I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed the heavy leather folder onto the center of the polished oak table. There is no new funding, Mother, I stated, my tone entirely devoid of inflection. I am not here for a family reunion. I am here in my capacity as Chief Executive Officer of Vanguard Capital Partners, the parent company of Obsidian Trust. The silence that followed was absolute. Julian's face drained of color, turning a sickly, translucent shade of gray. He stared at the folder as if it were a live explosive device. Obsidian, my father stammered, his booming voice suddenly hollow and fragile. Julian, what is she talking about? As of 12:01 a.m. this morning, Apex Innovations is in default on a $12 million high-yield commercial loan, I continued, sliding the legally binding documents across the table toward my brother. You missed the initial payment of $145,800 per Section 4. Clause 12 of your contract. The acceleration protocol is now active. Julian choked out, his hands trembling so violently he had to set the champagne down. Your obsidian? You set me up. I simply approved a loan application your broker desperately submitted. I corrected him, tapping the signature line with a manicured fingernail. You signed the agreement. You spent the capital, and you failed to generate revenue. As of this exact moment, Vanguard Capital owns 68% of Apex's intellectual property, all physical office assets, and the deed to the Connecticut estate you leveraged as collateral. The estate? My mother shrieked, her legs giving out as she collapsed into a Herman Miller ergonomic chair. Julian, you put our home up for collateral? It's my house, Alara. Julian yelled, slamming his fists on the table. You can't do this. I'm your brother. You are a defaulting debtor. I replied coldly. And I am foreclosing. Please vacate my building by 5 o'clock this evening. The realization hit them like a physical blow. The grand delusion of Julian's genius was shattered, replaced by the cold, unforgiving reality of a $12 million debt. My father, the man who had publicly disowned me over a microphone just 9 months ago, suddenly found his humility. He stumbled forward, his face pale and sweating. Alara, sweetheart, please. You have to understand. We were only trying to help your brother get on his feet. Your family. You can't put your own parents out on the street. You put yourselves on the street the moment you transferred the deed to a man with a documented history of financial illiteracy. I replied, checking my platinum Patek Philippe watch. It was 10:15. I had a board meeting at noon. My mother rushed toward me, tears ruining her expensive mascara. She reached out to grab my arm, but Marcus smoothly stepped between us, acting as an impenetrable wall of corporate security. Alara, we are so sorry. We were wrong about you. You are brilliant, successful. We are so proud. Just cancel the debt. We can be a real family again. You can move back into the estate. The estate is currently being prepped for public auction, Mother, I stated, my voice echoing in the dead silence of the boardroom. And your sudden onset of maternal pride is directly correlated to the balance of my portfolio. 9 months ago, my mundane data entry job made me a stain on the family reputation. Today, my corporate acquisitions make me your beloved daughter. The hypocrisy is mathematically quantifiable. Julian sat frozen, staring at the empty champagne flute. I need more time, he whispered, his voice cracking. Just give me a 6-month extension. I can pivot the software. I can find new investors. Your burn rate is $1.2 million a month, Julian, I said, reciting the figures from memory. Your customer acquisition cost is unsustainable, and your code base is fundamentally flawed. Extending your runway would be a breach of fiduciary duty to my shareholders. You are a terrible investment. I picked up the empty leather folder, leaving the foreclosure documents squarely in front of him. Security will begin escorting non-essential personnel from the premises in exactly 6 hours. I suggest you use that time to pack your personal belongings. The Aston Martin will be repossessed by the dealership tomorrow morning, as you've missed that payment as well. You're a monster. Julian screamed, his voice breaking into a pathetic sob. You planned this. You wanted to destroy me. I didn't destroy you, Julian, I said, turning my back on him for the final time. I simply handed you the rope, and you tied the knot yourself. I walked out of the glass-walled boardroom, the frantic pleading of my parents fading behind the heavy mahogany doors. The air in the corridor felt clean, crisp, and entirely mine. I stepped into the private elevator, pressing the button for the lobby. The empire I had built in the shadows was thriving, and the dead weight of my past had finally been liquidated.